Hello, I'm Mayor Ron Murkowski, and welcome to this special edition of Village Showcase. Today I stand in one of the iconic buildings in Greenwood Village, developed by John Madden, a true visionary, who created over 100 acres of commercial land known today as the Greenway Plaza Business Park. What's unique about this developer's approach to building is he directed these developments with unique landscape architecture and art-centric projects that gave a distinctive trademark to any project he planned and built in our community. For this program, I sat down with Mr. Madden to talk about his work in the village over the past 50 years and the legacy he will leave behind that has made Greenwood Village a special place. In the 1970s, while the Denver Technological Center, commonly known as DTC, was being developed on the east side of I-25, John Madden embarked on implementing his vision for commercial development on the west side of I-25. Why did you first come to Colorado?
Well, I wanted to. And the prompting reason was a major insurance company who had offices with me in a building I had in Des Moines, Iowa, wanted to know if I wanted to build a building in Denver area. And so we came over here. We had a strike going on a project I was building in San Jose, construction strike. And I came here and worked with the St. Paul Fire and Marine Insurance, and we found a location, and they said, great. And then my partner found this location, which was on the north side of Orchard in Greenwood Village. And so I said, I have great news for you. I've got a better location. It's in Greenwood Village. And the guy blew up. He just got madder than hell, and I haven't seen him since. And that was in 1970.
What did you do in Omaha? Was that development also?
Yeah, we built, we had I think it was the largest insurance agency in the state. And I started hawking my insurance company friends. We had probably represented about 20 insurance companies. And I built the Insurance Exchange building. And then one thing led to another, and first thing I know, I was developing in San Jose and Des Moines, Iowa, and now the Denver area, Greenwood Village.
So when did you and your late wife Marjorie actually make the move to plant your roots here?
It was in 1971. And I came to Greenwood Village to get this piece of land I mentioned zoned. And my little friend at the tech center, his name was George Wallace, sued. And he, I don't know if he sued the city, but he sued for us over zoning. And he brought the school superintendent in, and I'm probably the largest taxpayer in the school district now. But he brought the school superintendent in, saying that what I was going to build would be bad for the school system. It was such an overkill that the city reconsidered and gave me the zoning.
Can you tell us just a little bit about your docent work as a teenager during the war?
Yeah, growing up, our family, including my mother and my father and myself, and I believe my sisters, but the three of us worked since I can remember. And not just because we liked to work, but because it was necessary. And one of the places that I enjoyed working was the Joslin Museum. And I was a docent, I was a carpenter, carpenter's helper. And That was Saturday, Sunday, and some evenings. And once in a while in the evening, I got to go out on the stage and lift the lid on the Steinway piano so an artist like Oscar Levant could come in and smoking a cigarette in front of a large audience and play the Grieg Concerto or the Rhapsody in Blue.
John Madden's first land deal set the stage for subsequent land deals in the years to come. What's unique about Madden's approach to development was each building he designed was focused on three principles: color, form, and material. How would you describe your innovative approach to master planning, development, and construction?
Well, at one time, I thought the thing to do would be to master all of those elements. And so the easiest thing for me to do was form a construction company. And yet then I found out when I was competing to build a building that the element of ownership, the element of buying land and holding the land for use, and then building the building side of that triangle was always competing with the ownership side, and I was fighting with myself. And so I got out of the construction business, fortunately. And then as the years went by, I figured the smartest thing to do, considering that in my work it's a gamble. Very seldom do you have an order from somebody to just go build a building. And most of what I do is take land and own the land and try to create something that's a better, as we'd say, a better mousetrap. And so building the mousetrap, I try to find the most solid contractor I can deal with and have him build it.
Well, several quality commercial buildings bear Madden's hallmark in Greenwood Village today. Nevertheless, all are independently designed to present their own unique facade. Let's talk about some of your individual buildings and maybe a short story about each of them and the characteristics that you're particularly proud of. Let's start with Orchard Falls.
Orchard Falls building was an experiment using modern techniques on a great location. And it was a piece of property that we bought from a family called von Rosenberg. And in those days, we bought that whole piece of property for $200,000 and planned the building and put some parking underneath the building and used modern techniques. And on a Saturday, I was in a meeting with Jack McAllister and Bob Timothy, both who had been with, respectively, Northwestern Bell and Mountain Bell Telephone. They were leaders out of Omaha and out of Denver. And this was at the forming period of U.S. West, or the collapse of the Bell system as it had been known. And these guys were looking for their headquarters facility for U.S. West out here in Denver. And I was fortunate enough to be, maybe I'm the only guy working on Saturday then, because Denver was a hell of a lot different from Omaha. In Omaha, everybody went to work on Saturday morning, and here, no one's at work after noon on Friday. And so, that's not the case today. But we talked as though we were going to be the landlord, and we were. And Jack and Bob would put their heads together and think we ought to do it this way. And where would they go in the building, which we had under design? And it turned out they put their headquarters here, not their sole exposure, because they had a lot of people down in the Mountain Bell area. But Jack and Marilyn lived in Castle Pines, and why wouldn't they work out here? And that was really the start of that facility, and it was a hell of a lot of fun building it. And then I gave them the right to be a partner And they capitalized on that, and I became the ex-partner. He got me out of the building, and it became, U.S. West ownership.
How about Tuscany Plaza?
Well, Tuscany was a hell of a lot of fun. Went into that over my experience with the Mariottis, and I happened to meet with my wife and Jim Shugart, Carlo Mariotti, who today is revered by me. And Carlo had his quarry and his mill at Bagno di Tivoli Gardens, right outside of Roma. And I drove up and met him the day after his son Fabrizio was kidnapped by the mafia. Carlo associated Fabrizio's being free with my son Jay and I being there at his house. These things happened almost simultaneously. So in the morning, when we were leaving, he said, "Come to me with to the sawmill," and he pointed out the stone that's on the Tuscany building, and that's misnamed because Tuscany's quite a bit north of where the stone is really quarried. But he pointed it out and he said, "I'm going to book match. I'm going to book a match this stone for you in honor of Fabrizio and you being here." And I knew what book matching wood would be like on a piano or in a beautiful room, because I'd been there. And when this stone came, in parts of that building, the grains of the stone, honest to God, they look contiguous. They just flow.
Harlequin Plaza.
There's a certain amount of whimsy in a lot of us, and certainly with me. Harlequin Plaza was really in memory of a friend of mine named Harry Marinsky. And Harry had done the Harlequins and put them into bronze. And myself and my daughter would buy them as he would produce them. And these are emblematic, or they symbolize what goes on up in the hill towns still in Italy. And we were putting the building together, and here I had George Hargraves, my landscape guy, who became dean of the landscape school at Harvard. I had one of the top guys with Gensler Architects, and Harry drew the Picasso diamonds, the black and white diamonds that Pablo Picasso had used in one of his great art pieces, and that became the plaza.
Carrara Plaza.
Oh, that was fun. I had gotten involved with Italy so much, and I was intrigued with going to Carrara. And anybody, it ought to be on their, what we say, bucket list. You approach this small town in Italy off of the Mediterranean, and you look up at the hills, and honest to God, it's snow up there, and you wonder if they're skiing. And what it is, it's centuries of marble dust and scrappings from the white stone that is that this town is famous for. And so I got my son Jay had an architect friend named Kiyoshi Murata, so I hired him. And what he wanted to do right off the bat was get a friend of his from architecture school, a Japanese lady, a short lady, to go over and live in Carrara and teach these guys how to, in the quarry and in the factory, the mill, how to match the stone for this new building. And her theory was you match it with the veining in the stone. And in doing this type of development, the way I was doing it, you as a byproduct, you learn a lot about what goes into something because you're curious and you go there. I'm up in the mill, and the guy that's directing it can speak both English and Italian. And here this crowd of workers come around, and these guys started laughing when they heard the story about the veining of the stone. And what they had done on Carrara Place, they had laid the entire building out. We're doing that, laying it out on the floor, and then they were culling because what makes the stone remarkable in that building is that the background, the pieces of the stone that are so pronounced on blending. It's not the veining, it's the background, the gray to white. And that building, and if you see some other stone buildings out of that Carrara stone, that building is probably perfect, the way the white matches. And these guys did that. They did it on purpose, and they probably did it on purpose because the Japanese lady they didn't think knew what the hell she was talking about. And that was a proud thing for me. I'm not quite convinced that the design we did, that's such a long building, and the interiors are different, and you got to go from. I mean, we'll go walk the building sometime. I think, and interior-wise, we have 2 elevator cores, one at each end of the interior side, but there's a big space between the elevators, and it's almost functioning as 2 buildings, half on one side and half on the other.
How about the Triad?
Well, the Triad was really the first experiment we made here, and I look back what I built that for. This is when Harold Patton almost personally saw to it that Greenwood gave me the zoning on this land that I bought from Mr. Stake. And when I was buying that ground, after the city turned me down on the zoning and George Wallace won, and Harold came up to me and said, "You come back and I'll see that you get the zoning you need." So now I had from Mr. Stake, I paid him the incipient property values, which was something like in 1971, $3 million. But I had 50 acres interest-free option it gave me room to build other buildings there. And so we started Plaza North and Plaza South, and we didn't start Plaza West. And then the damnedest thing happened. I got a call from Mrs. John Fuller, who had one time had worked for me, and she told me that John's Manville had been in Denver and she'd seen them downtown. Well, we had some characters come out talking to us about what we were doing out here, and I put it together. I said, "That's John's Manville. They're out looking for a place to locate." And the damnedest thing happened. I called the hotels down around town. There weren't that many of them downtown. And I found out these guys were at the Brown Palace. And so I had it hand delivered, and I said, "I'll be in New York with my team on next Monday." And I can't remember what time. And they answered and said, "Meet us at the Dorset Hotel at 5 o'clock. And these guys that had come out to see me on a rainy day, when we were in a little shack over here on north side of Orchard, these guys came to the meeting, the same guys. And by the time we left, 2 in the morning, we had a lease, and they were going to move their headquarters from New York, 39th, I think it was 39th Street. And as a result, after moving their headquarters, or after making that deal, they wanted to move their computer facility, and that became the gray building at the Orchard and Greenwood Plaza Boulevard site that housed Manville's computer. And then the damnedest thing happened. John's Manville was going to buy a a ranch out west of town and build their headquarters. And I thought, they're not going to do that. They're not going to do that. Boom, signed the lease. And I think it was months. And sure enough, they bought the ranch. And to my way of thinking, they kind of portrayed their true colors. And then it was probably sour grapes. But they became the worst tenant we ever had.
Plaza Tower 1.
That was great. Plaza Tower 1. I'm talking to a guy named Stan Dorst in San Francisco, and we go over to California Street and bear down on the Stanford Court, and I tell my wife, I'll be back shortly. I'm going to walk over to Chevron's building, and I get up to Chevron's building and I meet the head of real estate and a guy named Stan Dorst and a lady named Sarah McAfee, and lo and behold, they are going to buy in on having a building built here in Greenwood, and they're looking to me. And I'm not an architect, and I'm a big guy, a developer guy. But they want to know how much the land is, what kind of a building we're going to put there. What we did is we sold them the land, and then we had fun. We interviewed for an architect, and I had a favorite guy. Mine was Kurt Fentress, and theirs was somebody else. And so their way of doing it was throw these guys out, and they hired somebody from down in Oklahoma or Texas. And the same thing happened on the builder. We had a builder lined up. I think it was Kiewit. They had somebody, so neither one of them got to build it. And another builder came in, but the building got built, and they had a lot of space in there. And then our job was to rent the rest of the space out, which we did, and that's always been a fun spot with me. And I don't know. I don't think Chevron owns it. No, they don't own the building now.
No, Granite Corporation owns it now.
Yes, Granite. Yes.
How about where we're sitting right now, Palazzo Verde?
This was a lovely experience, and I had fun with that. The green was a necessary color for a building to be. We want to have it be a green building. And here we're virtually next door to the Amphitheater, which I had hoped would have more of the opera, the classical type music than it does. And that's Giuseppe Verdi, and Verdi's a word for green in Italian. So I thought, as a joke, we'll have this become Palazzo Verdi.
Lastly, Greenway Athletic Club. Talk to us on how that came about and how you set up the special district that it is.
Jay Madden had the largest wolfhound I can recall, named Calhoun, completely black Irish wolfhound. And I had two good-sized Irish wolfhounds. Cluzo was black, and Kulady was wheaten, or you'd say white. And we used to go over there on Sundays because there were black foxes. And I had listened to Dina Merrill, the Dina movie star, about putting a world-class tennis facility in there. And I made a deal where her son David Rumbaugh was going to preside over the tennis facility. And there'd be exhibitions with world-class people, of the Bill Tildens of today. And there'd be a great thing for the neighborhood. And he's beheaded in a boating accident in Long Island Sound when the boat cavitates and gets him. And during the construction progress, we had asked for a surety bond guaranteeing that they were going to complete what they start. And the father, Dina's husband at the time, was certainly outspoken. He was a New England businessman and told me on the phone that he could buy and sell me easy and blah, 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 and how dare I do this. And well, the first thing that happened, I think, after they buried the remains, is they advised they're stopping payment. And so here we inherited a hole in the ground, and Jay said, you know, Dad, I think it'd be time for us to build something here, an athletic club. And so I went in hock, and we did, and we hired a builder, and Jay built the building really with a local builder and local architect, and then through the years we kept adding on and improving. And the irony is we kept doing this after we had contracted with Greenwood Village to have Greenwood own the facility in the year 2030. It's one of the, regarded, I think, as one of the top, certainly in the top 10, maybe top 5 clubs in the country. And well, it should be. My goodness, it's got a tremendous number of people that are regular attendees, and got great kid programs, got great swimming programs. It's a wonderful facility, and go to anywhere in the country almost, and you look at people that go in and out of that club. It speaks for itself.
Well, I look forward to being there with you on the handover in 2030.
Oh, I hope so, kid.
Yeah, exactly.
The handover.
Madden's love for art extended beyond his buildings. He's inspired to share his love of art through 2 museums and a world-renowned music venue.
I was on the board of the Denver Symphony, and Lenny Perlmutter and myself and a couple guys were driving out here, and I had built the amphitheater with George Hargraves, and it was mostly a landscape deal, and George entered it and won the United States of America Landscape Award for landscape architecture. And I thought, you know, that's damn good. And then Lenny said, John, this would be a great summer home for the symphony. And I thought, boy, that is true. And
Was that sort of the same time that Tanglewood and Blossom and some of the other?
Yeah. It was in vogue.
Right, exactly.
And so I think I built the restrooms. At that time, maybe the largest restrooms, certainly around here. And I used to love the kids going on toboggans and sleds down there in the wintertime over the grass. But we had this one summer, we had the symphony out here, and I can remember Ella Fitzgerald in the rain, and they had a canopy over her, and I thought, Jesus Christ, she's going to get lightning struck. But she's out there belting in the rain, and people are leaving, walking through the mud to get to their cars, walking out of their shoes. In our great newspaper here, the Denver, what are they called, Denver Post, had a story that said, John Madden Amphitheater rained out again. And you know, I'm kind of maybe hungover. It's Sunday morning. My daughter calls. Why do you have to put up with this? I said, what do you want me to do? She says, why don't you give the amphitheater to me? You can get a nice tax write-off. And I did. I gave it to the Museum of Outdoor Art. And what she did, she got on the phone and called Music Corporation of America, talked to MCA, boom, they're out here. She gets a lawyer, and she gets a lease done, and leases the damn thing. they put a wall around it. And then that Madden gets hell in the papers for putting a goddamn wall around the thing. And, and it was her doing all the time. And she becomes, I think, the most happily endowed charity in the area. And
we can see where the entrepreneurial spirit came from for her.
Probably so. And now she's got Chuck Morris with Anschutz in there.
Entertainment group.
And he's done a hell of a job there.
Talking about your buildings, can you tell us how your late wife Marjorie was involved in the design?
Oh, we had a lot of fun. And I think that started in our early days. We found out that whether it was in Omaha or Chicago or New York, San Francisco, a great form of entertainment was in the museums and also the art galleries. And that carried over to going to Europe. In the early days, going to Florence, kind of before it had been rediscovered in the wave of the 70s, there were bargains. For example, you could have a hell of a dinner, good wine, and 3 people could do this for $10.
That's a good deal.
You could go to Mama Gina's right across from where the hotel we stayed at in Firenze, and that was possible. And so in the early days, well, behind where I'm sitting, that wall is covered with artwork that came out of Florence, in the area around there, and the school was called the Macchioli, and in France it's called the Impressionist, and here in the States it's called Impressionistic art. But these were paintings that had been acquired by the Italian people in the late 1800s and early 1900s. The real value of artwork isn't so much in the money as in maybe the history and what the picture's about.
John Madden is a true artist in all that he has done, from building to preservation of art. His mark on Greenwood Village will remain as he continues his work to make a memorable impact on our community. What's in the works, the next future plans for the John Madden Company?
I'm a kind of a stickler for old things. You can look at the art here and you have a pretty good feeling about that way. And one of the movies I really like to watch over and over again, or there's several. One is Seabiscuit, one is Secretariat, and the other is Yankee Doodle Dandy. And I'm watching Jimmy Cagney, and I'm looking at that damn hat he's got, that American hat with the stripes and stars on and so forth. And I got carried away, and I'm thinking, I'm going to build Yankee Doodle Plaza. And a guy that I love, Kurt Fentress, he gets carried away with the thing. Today he sends us an email of himself in a Yankee Doodle hat that he made. And he's got this most beautiful building laid out, and the face of the building is 210,000 square foot building. And we could put double that amount of square footage on the site. And there's Kurt with his Yankee Doodle hat. And I showed the building about 2 hours ago to a company that's looking for 120,000 square feet, about virtually half the size. And I don't know if their humor is going to allow that, but I think, to me, it'd be an honor to have a building named Yankee Doodle Plaza, and have some colors and have some symbols, particularly in this neighborhood, which I think is the best, classiest neighborhood in all of, maybe all of Colorado, but certainly all of Denver. And right around the amphitheater and around, and so here's a, smaller than what we could put up, but here's a 7-story Yankee Doodle Plaza with a 1,000-car garage behind it, which has got way more car parking than we need, but it's got parking that would help out the buildings around it that we have. So I'm enthused about building that building, and we're starting to get on the warpath now. And ironically, across the street from there is what we call the Metro Club, and it's a follow-up to the Metropolitan Club that used to be out here at the Orchard Falls building. But this new club will be maybe more geared toward networking. It could almost be called the Network Club, and tied into almost to the next century, where people come and maybe they'll come for a cocktail, but certainly come for lunch, or maybe come over for a business meeting. And we think that that's kind of the benchmark, or maybe the hallmark for the future.
That's a good segue into, you've been here basically 50 years.
Yeah.
What have you enjoyed the most in that past 50 years in your association and activities there in the village?
Greenwood Village is a place to exudes pride, and the people who live here are proud of it. And my goodness, our athletic club's got, I think, 25%, maybe 30% of our members are people from the village, and maybe we chuckle, but we don't. We're proud to be here, and I think it's probably the best place in the United States to be, even better than Omaha.
And when you leave this earth, as we all will, but of course we're going to be together in 2030, what do you hope your legacy will be?
I haven't thought much about that. That's probably why I'm still here.
Well, let me rephrase it. What do you want to be remembered for?
So I think I like to be remembered today by helping some kids get better educated. It can't be everybody, but, and if you end up with 5 out of 20 that really improve, make something out of it, that's okay. I'm not looking for 20 out of 20.
Well, I want to thank you for leading the way philanthropically in Denver. I want to thank you for your iconic buildings, which will be around long after many of us are here. And thank you most of all for being just a great citizen of our city, and one that will be remembered many times off in the future.
Thanks, Mayor. Appreciate it very much.
That's a wrap. I'm Mayor Ron Rakowski. Thank you for joining us here on GV TV 8.